Thank you very much. I would like to thank all the organizers and the Archbishop for the help he provided for being here with you. It's a very interesting topic and a very interesting conference, and I really miss the time that we could be all together in Siluva Center. Let's hope that one day we'll do so. Let me share my presentation. Now I think you can see it. And I will start by saying that my presentation is entitled, as you can see, Pilgrimage and Polymorphic Tourism in the Post-Pandemic Societies. So religion is one important factor in motivating human action and certainly mobilizes visiting religious sites with the aim of worship, acquaintance with the religious and cultural heritage, the fulfillment of a vow, the investigation even of a ritual, etc. Throughout history, religion has influenced aesthetics and morals and created stable bonds of belonging. These elements bestowed a distinctive prestige both to the practice of pilgrimage and to the visits of religious sites. Ever since antiquity, historical figures undertook and testified trips that either constituted what today we would call a pilgrimage journey, or they incorporated a religious dimension within a tour of a wider interest. These trips continued to our days. These trips continued to our days against all kinds of adversities, hardships, travel hazards. The faith-based journeys, as old as the religious institutions, mirror, as Clift and Clift stated in 1996, an outer action with inner meaning. And they are associated with devotional practices such as prayer, fasting, votive offerings, worship, spiritual empowerment, etc. The first part of my presentation is entitled Contemporary Dimensions of Religious Tourism. Religious tourism in its modern dimensions draws upon activities that focus on visiting places and monuments considered sacred by their religious communities and at the same time valued by the rest of the world as significant due to their tangible and intangible assets. Tourists are interested in attending religious events, exploring the natural and social environment of religious sites, gaining insights on their historical dimensions, studying the monumental manifestations of religious life, and seeing relics and artifacts. Religious tourism in our days often has a mixed character, and it is intertwined with cultural heritage, modern sets for authenticity and leisure activities. Within this context, the religious sites became a focal point of interest for different visitors, while many theories attempted to analyze the linkages between religion and tourism, the diverse visiting motives, and the pilgrim-tourist relationship, as we already heard by our esteemed lecturers and professors before me. Thus, a conceptual polymorph emerged and incorporated analysis of pilgrimage, spiritual travel, visits to religious monuments, and others. Nowadays, the frame of religious tourism includes sites of great importance for the devotees but closed to touristic visits, such as Mecca, also significant for tourists and believers of various faiths, such as Jerusalem, and others that don't have any more their initial worshiping role, but attract equally believers and tourists. that is Vatican. And of course, places that they do not function as churches anymore. And this is the example of Hagia Sophia in Istanbul. A pragmatic approach accepts that there is
kaulelio dalis, o stula autentiška, rožinis ir dėžutė, o ten Faustinos kojos pėdos kaulelio dalis. Laipsnio relikvijos.
There is something in Latin, I don't know if it's for me or not.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, atsiprašau, prašytume išjungti mikrofoną. Dabar žinokit, nematau tiksliai, kas esate įsijungę apie kaulelius kalbate. Jeigu galima, gerai, ačiū labai. I'm very sorry, atsiprašau.
Okay, I will go on. A pragmatic approach accepts that there is neither a single type of religious expression nor a single set of motives that attract visitors to religious sites. In other words, the term integrates various dimensions and perspectives, and as a factional classification, serves the scientific analysis in constructing categories for a series of choices, mobilities, and activities associated with religious sites or other manifestations of religious life and spirituality. Concerning the relationship between pilgrimage and religious tourism, it can be noted that religious tourism focuses more on visiting, seeing, exploring religious sites, while the pilgrimage on visiting, participating, engaging. Sometimes even the lines between religious and cultural tourism are blurred, as the religious assets have religious as much as cultural value. There is also no absolute agreement on the key features of a distinctive religious monument. However, mention must be made of at least 4 characteristics. A, there is a historical evidence confirming its authenticity. B, it is considered as significant by a religious community. C, it is associated with the history of an era, nation, etc. And D, it includes tangible and or intangible cultural elements of supra-local significance. The religious monuments of the past, as well as the most important religious events, attract the interest of various visitors with or without religious motives as important symbols of tradition and identity. Thus, in the modern world, mixed sites are created where the sacred and the secularized coexist as reasons for visiting. And this is sometimes the case in Santiago de Compostela, as we've seen in the first presentation and in other places. The Vatican, Hagia Sophia, Notre Dame welcome visitors with exclusively religious interest, along with others who primarily enjoy their monumental aesthetic and cultural character. Indeed, today it is usual in churches and other religious monuments to identify different places for worship and for tourist visits, as well as a differentiated operating time. In all these cases, the sacred grounds and the touristic spaces are de facto interrelated. So what about after the COVID-19? Let's see the new perspectives. Vulnerability is a situation that touches one way or another the whole of humanity in our days, as our world tends to make endemic what Bauman describes as the combined experience of insecurity, of uncertainty, and of unsafety. The adverse effects of COVID-19 pandemic transform at a breathtaking pace the worldwide socioeconomic environment as we strive to break the chain of contagion, which has been rapidly spreading the last months, already 14 months now. In this sense, our societies are already post-pandemic, not because they passed and left behind the pandemic, but rather because after January 2020, every society as a system and social organism is changed to a significant extent and moved into the post-COVID-19 era. It is unlikely that our societies will go back to what they were. It seems that the course of the pandemic has also affected the way we understand touristic development. Sustainability gained a lot of attention, while the mass tourism motto as the absolute touristic narrative is questioned due to the circumstances. The question in the midst of the crisis is not how to maximize the touristic flow, a case that is either forbidden or extremely risky, but how to apply qualitative standards in a long and ecosystemic strategic plan. In the foreseeable future, development will no longer be understood only as economic growth, and it will not be measured with exclusively quantitative standards. New and important terms of assessment are coming to the fore. These are the protection of the environment, the safety and well-being of visitors, the preservation of the sacred places and experience authenticity, the communication between people and cultures in a world where the global is in constant dialogue with the local element. As Romanelli rightly argue, rethinking pilgrimages as critical systems aids in driving sustainable tourism development and supports the social and economic growth of local economies and urban areas by improving both the organizational and managerial capabilities of stakeholders involved in a multi-actor collaboration. In this sense, development in the field of religious tourism should include safety, well-being, authenticity, synergies, flexibility, and sustainability. In the dawn of a new era in tourism, the religious destination management should integrate the experience gained during the pandemic to preserve its core values such as spirituality and authenticity, self-reflection and community bonding, and at the same time to expand its scope and to adjust in the new conditions that widen the scope of discussion on tourism development as it requires embracing multi-goal, multi-domain, multi-actor, and multi-level approach. The term religious tourism as a wide special category includes not only activities such as attending religious services, but also pilgrimages, participation in local festivals, attending weddings or funerals, visiting religious significant sites, and other, as the World Organization for Tourism of United Nations states. Thus, it is a new kind of touristic trend that includes mixed motivations and different levels of personal involvement. Some of the visitors are more interested in seeing religious sites, while others are concentrated in participating in religious rituals, liturgies, etc. In other words, the religious sites very often host people with varied understanding of their own social activity in a range from a clear religious or cultural social action to mixed or even a blurred set of motives. One way or another, in the current phase of modernity, a visit to a religious site integrates multiple religious, cultural, and socioeconomic aspects of what is vaguely described as heritage. At this point, the term heritage denotes a collective point of reference. From this perspective, the pilgrimage tours can be triggered by the spiritual needs of a group or of people. At the same time, they may serve cultural, educational, and religious motives by integrating parallel visits to places of wider interest, while planned experiences of moderate leisure and recreational tourism are by no means rare. Let's say tasting the local gastronomy or having some skating dinner or whatever. The modern pilgrims, even if not intended, are de facto tourists, as they decide to make a spiritual visit in order to practice their faith, to remedy the perceived lack of center and meaning, or even to escape from the monotony of their everyday life. They dedicate time, money, energy. They use all kinds of touristic services, and their gaze meets various touristic attractions. So we go now to the challenge of the polymorphic tourism. Have been said all that above, the hypothesis that all aspects together form a multi-level experience to the visitors is justified and worth to be further examined. This way, the research interest turns from the aim to differentiate and classify the pilgrims and tourists in motivational categories to better understand the sites of interest as integrative and multi-level networks of human, that means religious, socio-cultural, touristic, or whatever action in modernity, that form a polymorphic touristic continuum. The polymorphic proposal is by nature qualitative rather than quantitative, as it doesn't aim to the uncontrolled growth of the income to rearrange and reconfigure the existing situation within a strategic plan. This plan is based on A, combining visiting options linked with religious monuments, and B, setting rules and principles at the factional level, that means working hours, proper infrastructures, interrelation between sites, monuments, and activities. The visitor's needs assessment is not caged in separate motivational categories, but rather focused on the plurality of motives of modern tourists and the variety of experiences the religious sites may offer. Based on the polymorphic strategy, a diversified circle of functionality could be designed, regulating the different types of motivation and visiting activities. That means different age groups, different social groups, families, parishes, pilgrims, lonely travelers. So, another factional basis could be established on the special interest. That means liturgical life, ascetic living, interest in architecture, environment, etc. All these should not necessarily form a kind of seat option. On the contrary, their interconnection might serve an enriched eco-religious tourism, religious cultural tourism, educational religious tourism, and all the other forms. In this way, in the frame of the polymorphic plan, not only the monuments, the relics, and the artifacts, but also the intangible heritage, including the beliefs, the values, and the lifestyle of the local communities, together with the art, the legends, the liturgical text, and chants, can be integrated. Activities beyond faith practices that may be generated are walking, participating in fairs and local community events, recreational and alternative touring, and other choices related to healing, ecotourism, cultural tourism, study visits. By the way, this is a very threading and very important part of religious tourism in our days. In this sense, cultivating a collaborative culture is crucial. only the coordination of actions and the synergy among communities, religious institutions and churches and public bodies, trade unions and local organizations, political, economic, and social stakeholders can bear fruit in a polymorphic plan. I will finish my presentation by providing some conclusive remarks. This analysis deliberates a new approach in religious tourism described as polymorphic strategy. A polymorphic strategy on religious tourism is not seeking to offer practical advice on how to quantitatively increase the incoming tourists, but rather to regulate randomness and lack of organization in the existing situation to safeguard the eco-social economic sustainability of the religious sites and to keep them open to multi-motivated visitors and dynamic touristic agencies. The polymorphic framework suggests the possibility of a multi-layered tours and visits that allow a more integral development. The obvious challenges are A, to create a polymorphic strategy having multi-destination and multi-motive patterns as each integral part, and B, to develop a pluralistic concept that is able to maintain the spiritual character of the visits and to develop a modern, sustainable, eco and community-friendly touristic strategy. Further examination of the polymorphic proposal will bring to the fore new challenges, issues, and developmental perspectives in the field of the religious tourism and organized pilgrimages. This is an example of what we're doing in Greece. This is a project currently in Greece trying to implement the ideas of the polymorphic tourism in the religious tourism era. And this is an article where I try to explain further my ideas and my proposal on polymorphic religious tourism. Thank you very much for your attention.